Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video I'll be covering Mythic ANDUIN WRYNN and everything you need to know before pulling that boss. That includes setting up MRT notes, different groups for various parts of the fight, which I'll explain later, any images you can provide to your raid that can help them kind of get a picture of what they need to do, things like weak auras, raid composition, which is a big one for this fight, cooldown usage, healing and offensive cooldowns, that is, defensives also. So all those kinds of things, and hopefully this is useful and really helps you guys shave off those wipes on Anduin, because it's a tough boss. It's probably the second hardest boss in the raid instance, I think, especially after all the nerfs that have come in. And I'll be looking at this post nerf here, so it is kind of more relatable to you guys as well. So if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because I'll be doing this definitely for Ragallon and the Jailer as well, because those bosses can be pretty involved. And let's just get started here with the initial kind of MRT note and what I've divided things into. So as you see here, it's kind of inverted. We started out with things kind of at the top as people needed them, and we shifted them down as we started progressing further in the fight. So the first thing is actually down here, which is the add groups. And that's the groups you're sending down in the Kingsmorn phases. You need to send 2 different groups of people, and that's kind of where raid composition comes into play. Given the current state of the boss, where you need to kill every single add in both groups, having 2 DKs is extremely valuable, borderline mandatory. I want to say having at least 1 DK is mandatory, because you might be able to make it work with 1 DK and then 1 heavily stacked knockback group. So if you had like 4 knockbacks in a group, you could make it work. But 1 guarantee mandatory, 2 DKs almost mandatory. We ran 2 DKs. You see here, I didn't actually play my Druid on this boss. I played a Blood DK because grips are that important for the downstairs phase, and I will show you guys a video of how to do the DK grips fast and efficiently, and you guys can show that to all your DK players so they understand what they need to do and how to do it. Now, on top of that, how you're spreading these groups is important. First and foremost, 2-minute specs go in group 1. That is important because group 1, if they're able to pop their CDs down there, and it's at about a minute. This thing is just before a minute, it's like 50 seconds, something like that. But that basically lets them have their 2-minute CDs back up for the Bloodlust, which is about 3 minutes into the fight. And again, these statics are actually these timers are fully static. So these timers never change on like something like Calandris, right, where it depends on your push timings. The timers will always be the same on this boss. So that's why you want 2-minute classes to go into group 1. You can also see here the the group 1 number of people in this group is significantly less, because the 2-minute classes are quite powerful, right? We have Hunter Wild Spirits, we have the DPS DK. That's also important to note. When you're picking between the 2 DKs to go in which group, always let the DPS DK go in group 1. If you have 2 DPS DKs, well, then obviously one of them has to go into group 2. But the reason for that is, again, their 2-minute CDs will come back up for Lust. The Blood DK's 2-minute CDs won't, because they're in group 2, but that's less important, right? We care more about the DPS player having their DPS CDs for the Lust than the tank. So that's why the DPS DK is down there. The Hunter is down there. The Ellie Shaman kind of blast as well. And that is more than enough to actually absolutely annihilate the trash down here with more than enough time. And that's the thing also, you have an extra 5 seconds now with Hopelessness. So you have a lot more flexibility with post nerf. Looking at group 2, this is more your 1-minute specs or your 1.5-minute specs that are in this place, right? The Enhancement Shaman, the Warriors. The big carry here is the Arcane Mage, and that's the big thing. So each group has a carry for the damage. In group 1, it's the Hunter with Wild Spirits, and in group 2, it's the Arcane Mage. Make sure both groups have some sort of major carry down there. These are the 2 best specs for it, in my opinion, right? Hunter and Arcane Mage. And it is important to put them in these groups respectively, right? Because the Arcane Mage will get CDs up for the Intermission. The Hunter, if you put them in group 2, will not. So, or they comes much later. So just keep that in mind. It is good to kind of get this balanced initially, because it will give you damage later in the fight when you start seeing the Intermission. The other thing to note about downstairs group is Mass Dispels. Mass Dispels are helpful for your healers. It makes their lives easier to heal up all those adds almost instantly. It's not mandatory, I will say. We did do this a while without a second Mass Dispel, and it was fine. It worked just fine. It takes a little bit of different learning, but you don't need 2 master spells. You don't even need 1 master spell. You can do this without. It's much easier with a master spell. We actually sent a Disc Priest down, which is not ideal, strictly because it was a master spell and the Paladin can just blast the ads and heal them all almost instantly. Similarly, we have the Shadow Priest going down in group 2, master spelling, and then we have the Venthyr, Resto Shaman, and then the Mistweaver Monk kind of tops everything else up after the Venthyr Resto Shaman goes ham. So that's how we kind of handle those groups. If you can, a DK and a Priest in each group. DK is much more important than Priest though, so keep that in mind. Now, the one important thing here is who you're keeping upstairs. So that is actually relevant. So there are a few classes that do gain more from being upstairs and don't really help that much downstairs. Havoc Demon Hunter, for example, they can get very, very good brand uptime if you keep them on the boss the whole time. If you need to send them down, you need to send them down, right? At the end of the day, their boss damage in the Anduin phases is not relevant, so keep that in mind. If you need to send someone down that I'm talking about right now, then send them down. It's much more important to kill these ads in a decent amount of time and bring everyone up safely. Feral Druids also get a ton of boss damage by using their bleeds on the soul ads, which I'll talk about in a second here, and funneling into the boss. So those are 2 kind of specs. If you have them, we actually did have a Feral Druid in our kill here. They're very, very good at funneling and staying upstairs, and they don't really contribute too much downstairs, so it's not much of a loss if you choose to keep them up. The other thing is a healer. What healer should you keep up? And there are 2 prime candidates, and that's Disc Priest and Resto Druid. Those are what I would recommend. If you have one of those, select one of those to stay up. We had both, so again, we sent the Disc Priest down because we only had 2 priests in our group and we wanted the master spell. The reason you would keep up a Disc Priest and you would keep up a Resto Druid is because a Disc Priest will have mind games for every single barrier, very, very helpful for healing it up, and a Druid can time a Convoke, a healing Convoke for every single barrier as well. So they both have healing available to every single barrier, and that's why you could potentially keep either up. Disc has a much harder time downstairs, I will say, but again, they contribute the master spell. So if you put them with a healing spec like Holy Paladin that can solo the ads downstairs, then it doesn't really matter. So that's what we did. We kept the Resto Druid up the whole time, and we sent the Disc Priest down, even though Disc Priest is bad downstairs. Don't get me wrong, it's bad downstairs, but we just wanted the extra master spell because it just made our lives easier and it was more consistent. Now, speaking of healing CDs, I have a separate note for healing CDs. This was not distributed to the average, the regular player, only the healers, because, I mean, they don't need this giant, like, look, they don't need this on their screen. You know what I mean? It's given to healers, and it's their responsibility to make sure that, you know, they were on top of it, all that stuff. But let's talk about the placement here. So we have a big disc ramp here and in barrier 1. Note that this barrier 1 is when everyone is up, and I'll show you like kind of positioning as well later on when I go through the video. But everyone's up for this barrier, so it's very, very easy. We just literally just Devo here to get it on CD. That's it. Next, we have the 2 healers that remain up, popping most of their CDs. Keep in mind, of course, what's not in here is Druid convoking every single one of these. A Resto Druid is convoking every single barrier here, except for the first barrier. I don't believe he convokes the first barrier because there's no reason to, but barriers 2, 3, etc., all getting healing convoked. Some CDs are used downstairs. For example, the Monk's Invoke is downstairs, I believe, to help heal up down there. And like Chain Harvest is also downstairs, for example, in this group. But also keep in mind, when you're putting these healing CDs, remember, the Paladin and the Disc Priest is downstairs for this barrier because of how our groups are. Right? The group 1 healers are downstairs and they're not available to heal here. The group 2 healers are down here, not available to heal here. So make sure you assign your healing CDs accordingly. And don't forget your other externals. Actually, yeah, not listed here is actually there's a rally for this one. And I think that's it, actually. Yeah, there's a rally for this one, so I can put that in there as well. That's how that was. Now, moving on to kind of the intermission stuff. This is actually not a ton of damage, so as long as you have some smaller things assigned. We had a Devo assigned for later in the phase, we had a healing convoke for whenever it's needed, and we had the Paladin with wings as well. So as long as people are mostly dodging swirlies, and the big thing is actually you're at 100% energy. If you're at 100% energy, people are dodging swirlies and you're avoiding the walls. There's not actually a ton of damage in this intermission phase, and it's relatively safe. You don't need to commit that much in terms of healing CDs to it. For P2, the barrier timings are a little different. There's 2 barriers only. This first barrier happens when group 1 is down. The second barrier happens when group 2 is down. So there's no barrier with everyone up. And so healing cooldowns kind of transfer accordingly. Very, very similar to the second and third barrier above. First intermission, the exact same. They are 3 minutes apart, so you're fine with that. And then last intermission, it's all about CDing hope breakers and hopelessnesses. And you can see here, right, we definitely hard stack these hopelessnesses. Specifically, the first one is very important to kind of stack up those healing CDs on, because they can be, the fight in its current state can be quite short once you get into P3. And so you'd much rather front load your healing CDs on this first hopelessness and just hope you don't really need to deal with the second one, than to kind of spread them equally. Because actually, even on our kill, like, we didn't really do the second hopelessness very much. We like half did it, and that's really it. In terms of other things in the note here, so let's move on. The big thing, AoE CC. Okay, AoE CC goes in hand with the ad group. So it's important that people in group 1 for the AoE CC are not in group 1 for the ads. And similarly, group 2 for the AoE CC, not in group 2, because their job is going to be to CC the new Mythic ads that spawn from Kingsmorn. So for those that don't know, when Kingsmorn on Mythic hits a player, it leaves an ad that begins a 12-second channel, and if it completes, then the person it's linked to instantly dies. And to pull people out of that realm, you need to kill those ads, but obviously if you kill them too quickly before they're done, then, you know, you're not going to finish your percent in time downstairs. So you need to just AoE stun them over and over and over again until you're ready to kill them. And so you just kind of slowly damage them until you're ready. And this is going to be the source of a lot of your wipes. Just getting that timing down. My key recommendation here is be consistent. Assign one person for each of the groups to be the main source of damage, one person to be the sub source of damage, and then everyone else is just bursting when you call for the kill. So for each of our groups, we had one Destro Lock as the main source of damage. So we had a Destro Lock in each group, separated on purpose so that they could be basically driving the stuns as well, because of course the Destro Lock 4-piece or 2-piece or tier does those AoE stuns as well, and they also have an AoE stun, and they're also driving that damage. They're kind of spamming Rain of Fire on those ads, slowly ticking them down alongside, I believe it was the Survival Hunter in group 1, and in group 2 I believe we had a Starfall and some, I think it was some warrior damage, I believe it was. In group 2. Then when it came to bursting, it would be carried by, in this group, the Ellie Shaman, in this group, the Arcane Mage, with like Touch of the Magi and Stormkeeper kind of deal. And then also, as they could, DPS would run on top of it, AoE spin them down, and then get off, because you don't want to blasphemy them. Now, there is about a 20-second grace period now, where if you kill a soul, they will not be affected by blasphemy, and there is a bit of a weird timing with blasphemy in the first phase. And that's why, again, you're going to have a lot of wipes in P1, getting this timing down, and also solving the blasphemy. And I'll go through that exactly in the... Actually, no, I'll go through that now. Let's go through P1. Okay, let's talk about weak auras first, actually. So, weak auras. So, there are some useful ones. I'll link all of these down below for you guys. Wicked Star Bart plus Phone Sound, helpful for Wicked Stars. Obviously, lets people know when they have it, make sure, and when to dodge. Befouled Barrier one. This will show the time left and the HP on the Befouled Barrier on Mythic, of course. And it'll give you a little notification when it's done. This is good for anyone actually calling the kill. This will show when the ads are all dead downstairs, so you know exactly when you want to kill downstairs. And then this is a good one for everyone for the intermission, something we haven't talked about yet. The Monstrous Souls, which are like the big priority ads, it shows when they're below 50%, so that's basically when people would want to swap to them. But now, let's go talk about Mythic Anduin here. I've got two different POVs here, one for group 1, one for group 2. So let's go look at this. Group. This is group 2 POV. So we'll go through here. On pull, we pull right to this center spot. And again, there's a lot of different variations of positioning on this fight. What really matters is you're consistent. You don't need to use this positioning that we used. You can use much different positioning. It's not a big deal. But this is just what we used and how it worked for us. We pull to here. You're going to see the first barrier come down very soon. And this is why it's very easy. The entire raid pretty much is stacked up right here. We're going to be in this barrier. This barrier is just going to like disappear. So very, very easy to handle. And then we come to the marks. And this is where it gets a bit difficult. So this is a picture we made again, raidplan.io. Very, very helpful. This is P1. We assigned a spot for literally everyone in the raid. And this is basically to make it a little bit more consistent right off the bat. There's a couple different strats, right? There's like the four-man strat where like you have like a bunch of like 4-man range stacks and the melee stacks, whatever. We just did this here. We found this to be easier for us to accomplish. Everyone has a set spot. And the big key thing here is to never just instantly run over anyone to clear. You kind of like jab step towards them, especially early in prog. Late in prog, people kind of have their default clearing buddies usually. But early in prog, you know, do a little tentative jab step before you soak on someone. Make sure they're on the same page as you, because you have 12 seconds now to clear this. You have so much time to clear these debuffs. Do not rush. Take your time. It'll cut off so many wipes. So we had these positionings assigned for P1. And so these marks come out just after this barrier. So you want to make sure this barrier is fully healed before. Then people can spread out for their marks. You have some time. Marks go out. And like I said, we're pretty late in prog at this point, so we have kind of set things. People come together, and the key here, I'm going to rewind again. Rewind and show you guys. The key here is that you need to make kind of hallways or pathways for people after you've cleared. So you see, people are clearing, and they're either running back in to stack under the boss, or they're running to the edge here. So you see people on the edge, and that means that these people in the middle can all just run through this middle hallway. So you never want to be in the middle ring of the room. You always want to be either stacked under the boss or right on the edge. And that gives all the space in the middle where people that are the last couple pairings can just full sprint at each other. Then we move over the boss to this point for Kingsmorn. Just using kind of that ground as a reference. AMZ going down. And so now these are these ads that I'm talking about where you have to chain CC them. And now we have our positionings for the group 2 that stays up. So the first group that stays up. So we pull the boss over here away from the ads because these wicked stars will silence and make them unCCable, or heal them, sorry, and make them unCCable. So you don't want to hit them with stars. All the stars and all the ranger shooting stars over here. Again, I believe this pull is pre-nerf. So again, we have 2 stars. You're only going to have 1. We're just chain CCing. You can see here, we do not want to kill these ads yet. We just have mostly the warlock doing damage. Pretty much no one else is hitting them. Healing CDs go down in this barrier. And we call for the kill now. So we move over. We kill them all. Everyone's spinning. But there is a hopelessness coming out. And here's the key thing. All the people with hopelessness here, so that's only the group that stayed upstairs. The group that stayed downstairs will not get this debuff. The group that stayed upstairs, you need to make sure that you get out before this cast happens, so you need to run away over here. Meanwhile, the group that's just coming up, you pop up in the middle of these souls, you spin, and you do not move. You do not move at all, because it's not going to be safe for you to move. And so you see here, we spin, we all back up. There's a bunch of people stacked up right under the boss, and everyone else just starts clearing. And that's how you handle that first hopelessness. And then there's basically just more stars. And then we have another Kingsmorn 10 seconds from now. I'll show you actually my group downstairs as well. And then I'll show you how they handle it upstairs. But let's look. So this is how you would actually handle. And this is something you can show to your DKs as well. This is how you grip the ads. So step 1. If you're a tank, taunt the big guy. That's step 1. If you're not a tank, don't taunt the big guy. If you're not a tank, you walk up as far as you can, you grip that ad close to you, right? The ad that you're running away from. So with this positioning, we're running around the room this way, we would grip this ad. You see in P2, it's like a little different. We start over here and we run around this way, so I grip this ad over here. But always regular grip first. Then as you come closer, you can A-bomb limb, grip these ads over here, and keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. If you ever need to stun these ads, do it. Pull them all in together. You mass grip if needed, as well as if you're blood DK, and that's kind of how you just slowly walk around. And the big thing here, though, is you might have missed it, is you do need one knockback in this group, in the DK group as well. It's a little too far. We're moving around, gripping. Knockback comes in. He might have already knocked. Actually, he definitely did already knock it back. So he knocked it back. It was over by purple, and he knocked it this way. So one knockback with alongside a DK is enough. In the first group, there's the Ellie Shaman knocking back. In this group, it's the Boomkin. And that just gets absolutely nuked by the Arcane Mage mostly there. And we're done. We're just waiting. We have 6 seconds to get broken out. We break out. We blow these up. And we just go to the barrier there because the barrier is kept clear. Everyone else is clearing over there. Now, let's look at this from the upstairs perspective. It's got to be like over here. I think. All right. They're downstairs. They're coming up. Stars are going out. Okay, so yeah, here's the next Kingsmorn. It's very similar, but the timings are different. So do note that these timings are different. They're not the exact same. So Kingsmorn goes out. Waiting, and they're getting a barrier very, very quickly here. 5 seconds into this, they get a barrier. So they pull away to the same spot. Here's the barrier already. Again, keeping CCs on these ads. All these going away. And meanwhile, they're watching the health up here. They have marks in 5 seconds. They actually get marks earlier. We're done downstairs, so they go and start killing. And again, very similar. They get most of them dead, but not quite all of them, because their timings are slightly different. They get the barrier earlier. They get the blasphemy a little bit earlier as well. So they don't quite get the same amount, or they don't quite get the same exact timings, and it makes it a little bit actually harder to kind of execute the exact timings. But the good thing is here, you don't really need to rush kill these. You're perfectly fine waiting a little bit longer, especially now, because you have the extra 5 seconds to break people out. So it's not a huge rush here. Keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about intermission. So, intermission stuff, I believe it's just... yeah, okay, so I don't have anything assigned for the intermission stuff. It is really just those weak auras I mentioned here. And yeah, we'll just go through the intermission then. There's nothing super crazy going on. We'll fast forward. So this boss goes immune. Pretty much, yeah, when the stuff goes blue, boss goes relatively immune to damage. Fallen King comes out. We hold Lust here for a few seconds until these ads are up. Pop Lust here. Monster Soul right there. And the big thing here is we use these markers to kind of call wall positionings. You never want to be on the edge, obviously, because a wall can spawn right there. But you also never want to be kind of... There are a few bad spots to be caught in. And always we swap to these Monster Souls when they're at 50% or lower. We call for a full swap. And you see here, we're just kind of going around the edge and normally tucking back in behind walls. That's why, you know, right? If we were like in the middle here, very, very bad spot to be in. You always want to be towards an edge, but not directly on the edge. Because otherwise, you know, a spawning wall can just take you right out. And tucking behind walls, very, very good strategy. So it'll take you a few pulls to kind of get used to the movement in this fight. But you want a few people out as well, baiting. You see we have like 3-4 ranged outside of the group. And they're basically just baiting the ghoul swirls, the blue swirls, off of the melee. There's still going to be a few, obviously, but a bunch of them just get baited super far away, and that's really helpful, because otherwise you start running out of space really, really quickly. So yeah, we lust and we pot the first burn. The big thing here is we have one Venthyr chicken, and he is ramping the second Monstrous Soul always, and that made that super consistent. He just ramps and nukes that second monstrous soul. Meanwhile, everyone else is lusting and potting the first one, and that was really all we needed. Both phases he does that. Both intermission phases he does that. Ramps the second monstrous soul. And that also lets people pot twice in the intermission, right? If you pot with the bloodlust, you can then pot the second monstrous soul in the second intermission. So keep that in mind in terms of pot timers. Then we come to P2. So the big thing for P2 is CCs. So there's going to be 4 of these soul ads in P2, and you can fully hard CC them. And so we had 3 people assigned to hard CC them, and then some backups as well. And basically our kill order was, we always started at green. We killed green, blue, orange, then purple, and then we killed purple, orange, blue, and then green when the second spawn happened. So we would kind of go around and then go backwards around. So we had one variable CC where the hunter would either he would CC the 4th ad we're killing, basically. So either the purple ad on the first set or the green ad on the second set. That kind of deal. Now, in terms of how we actually handle these ads, the big thing is you have to keep them kicked. They can be CC'd in any way. Of course, they will DR stuns, so things like that. So you can't just chain stun them like you could with the small soul ads. These guys, it will DR. You can kick them, though. So things like the Warlock kick, which has the extra long lockout, very valuable here. And it is important, again, not to hit these with the Wicked Stars. And just basically we had a kind of CC rotation on these later ads, much more important. These earlier ads, much less important, especially the first ad. The cast is so long, it basically gets soloed by Destro Warlocks and their random Infernals. So you don't need too much assigned to it, and just make sure people kick it. Second one, I think we had one person specifically assigned to stun and kick it. This one is where you started to have specific stuns used and called for. So we started this ad, the 3rd ad always, with a Hodge into my kick into a stun. I believe it was Hunter stun. And then it would die. This one always had a beam into a max combo point kidney shot into a kick if needed. That was this ad. So that was basically ads 3 and 4. So orange and purple initially, and then blue and green for the second set, because those were ads 3 and 4, because of course that cast time gets faster and faster and faster and faster as you kill ads before it. Now there was a start where you kind of set up a cyclone here, and you would like put the Kingsmorn there. That, with the health nerf to these ads, we actually didn't need to do that because we were killing these ads so fast, and it's actually much easier if you have full time killing that 4th or that second ad for the group. And I'll show you what I mean in a second there. Because it just makes it much easier, because once you lose half your raid, all of a sudden the damage on those ads slow down, and you have to deal with that ad living and casting for much longer. So let's see what that looks like here. Okay, so we move boss to beside triangle for cleave. Ad spawns. Hard CCs go out. And you see how slow this cast is, right? And it is basically dead before even a star is even shot. We move to the next one. We already have a certain person assigned to stun and kick this one. It's a little shorter. It's not a big deal. Still relatively easy. And this is where it starts getting hard. We start with a Hodge. Hodge because it's such a long stun. Kidney also for the next one because it's such a long stun. Going to go into a kick here. And it's going to go into another stun. And then last ad. We have this lockgate again. The lockgate was again for the Cyclone strat, because normally this would take another like 3 or 4 seconds still. So the Kingsmorn would be channeling, and Group 1 would lockgate into the Kingsmorn because the tank would aim the Kingsmorn at the lockgate. That's no longer really a thing, again, like I mentioned. But if you are finding yourself slow in DPS, you can set up this lockgate and lockgate into the Kingsmorn here. But we just basically instantly beam this thing into kidney when it starts getting low. And I'll switch these here, guys. Is that too far? Oh no, it's good. That was too far. Okay, so here it is. Again, this was a pre-nerf one, so they gated in. That's what I was talking about, basically. So how we used to handle this is here, and it's still usable if your DPS is a little slower. So you kill this 3rd ad and have the first group gate into this Kingsmorn while this ad is cycloned. And then you don't have to worry about this guy casting, and then you chain the beam and the kidney, and I think this needs an extra interrupt as well. Basically, that's how you would handle this pack here. Getting perked because I get hit by a star. And then you have these ads. So you need much less AoE damage assigned to kill these ads because you're killing an ad on top of it the whole time. Also, this DPS check is way less stressful because there's no blasphemy timing overlapping. You can basically, like, as soon as you're ready to, just have literally everyone stand on these ads and nuke them. So it's much harder to meet the DPS timing in P1 because of the blasphemy overlap than it is here. You can just kind of blast them, you see, with the wild spirits and the stars along the outside. And that's the boss positioning here, right? So you want to make sure you're positioned in such a way that people can stand in this barrier, but people can also aim stars to the outside here. Then we have, let's go back here. See group 2, right? They're going down, doing the same thing. Nuking, they come up in the barrier. Barrier gets healed off. We're healing in the barrier. Everyone who can be stands in it. Everyone else shoots the stars away. And then we move to the second set of ads. And similarly, we found that we can just kind of assign the warlocks to hit this orange ad instead of hard CCing it. So we don't hard CC this ad at all. We have the warlocks havoc off of this ad, and we assign them to kick it while everyone else is killing this purple ad right here. You're gonna see if CCs go out, everyone's focusing this purple ad. Warlocks and the boss tank goes over to this ad. Kill this purple ad. Kingsborn starts over here. Group 1, or the second group rather, can lock gate into it again, or they're just walking over, getting Grim Reflection damage. Group goes down. It is a tad bit different. So actually, I will show you because it is a little different. Like I mentioned, you just come in at a different spot in the room. All right. So like I said, you come in across from the room. So again, you have just a way you're assigned to run around the room. So I just taunt this guy and grip this guy, and then start the mass grip. And it's the same thing, just in a different direction. Like literally the same thing, just walking around the other direction. And, you know, mass grip to group them all up. Done. Right? That very simple. Very simple. You don't even need the mass grip, obviously, if you're a DPS DK. Grouping them all together like that's just fine. Going back here. So what they're handling up here, they pull the boss basically to a similar spot so they can shoot stars in a similar spot. Nuke this Grim Reflection down. Again, we have an extra stun here assigned and a couple kicks to make sure it doesn't get a cast off. Barrier goes down fairly close to the ad so people can hit the souls while still being in the barrier for the most part. And, you know, we kill the ads up here, you can see, and they go blast these souls. And this is where you start getting to a little tiny bit of a race. So the thing here now is notice how they never touched any of these ads based on just how the Kingsborn timer worked. It would be a giant pain to try and kill these ads while only half the raid is up, right? And so what you basically do is you speed run downstairs like normal, and you just start nuking all these ads with everyone up using the same CCs as before, right? It's still Hodge into kick into stun, and it's still beam into kidney. But you are on a bit of a timer because if these ads get to intermission, you just instantly die. So you have 20 seconds here. Focus on getting the barrier healed up first, then we go. So we instantly go. Open this with the Hodge. Same thing as before. The kick. And to the other stun if we even need it. It just kind of dies. Go here, beam, 6 seconds ish. You have more than this actually, because he'll go to the middle and he'll channel for a bit, so you have more time than this. Right, so he's in the middle, he's channeling. We're still good. We kill it just in time. Much easier to kill that fourth ad because everyone is up the whole time, so it doesn't even make it through the kidney usually. Then intermission 2, it's the exact same as intermission 1. Again, you just don't have bloodlust, so you know you'll do less damage, but again, make sure you're CDing that first one and you have some sort of CD for the second one, right? So we have the big CD covering that second one, is always the Venthyr Boomkin, and in this case we also have all pots. So exact same thing, not really going to spend time going through it. And then we get to P3. I was very far into P3, I just skipped. Okay, so yeah, current state of the boss, like we got him down to 12.3%. That's decent. We've gotten better. It's actually very, very possible that you can 10% push him. But this boss is killable if you get him below 20%. What you're probably aiming for is 15%. But note that if you're at like a 15%, you cannot skip the second hopelessness. 12.5% is kind of the barrier for skipping second hopelessness. As you can see on this bowl, we barely get through it with skipping second hopelessness. You could probably do it at 13% is probably the push there, but that's anything more than that is definitely not going to happen with the second hopelessness skip. And in terms of positioning, again, another graphic. Here we are. Everyone has an assigned position, and these are very purposeful positions. So I'll show you the ERT note we have again, or the MRT note rather. So we have soak groups assigned here. We do a 3 soak, a 2 soak, a 3 soak, and then a 2 soak. Important here, there's 6 people in each. These 3 people initially are the ones that are soaking it, and their location is according to the note. So Rag's on the left, Enerva's in the middle, Winter's on the right. Sim is soaking the circle that spawns, because that's the mythic mechanic. A circle will spawn directly across from where the person soaks it. So Sim's soaking the left one, I'm soaking the middle one, Borg soaking the right one. Similarly, these, and you need to position people accordingly so that they can not only get access to the center to soak, but also so that the catcher is in a position directly across where they can actually catch the orb. So let's look back at the picture here. We have the first 3 soaks here. Warrior. If he steps in right here, it shoots directly across to the Demon Hunter, who's soaking in the first set. Barrel soaks there. The tanks can just get it. DK soaks there. Shaman can get it. When they're done soaking, they immediately move under the boss, and this is why you have these two fairly separate here, because these people need to do a bunch of movement to get into position after this first group has soaked and gotten out of the way, because of course if anyone touches circles here at all ever, you die. So you need to make sure that these 6 people get out of the way kind of before these 3 can get in their position. So you need to do a soak between. You can't just back to back do your melee soaks. I know melee want to get their uptime, but they kind of have to chill out there. It's not a big deal. So these 3 people soak and immediately step under triangle. These 3 people catch. They're kind of holding a little bit. When these 3 people move under the boss, then here you have I believe it's the H-Paw moving into the left, the Warrior moving into the middle, and the Rogue moving into the right here. And then that opens it up for this person to go under boss, this person to go under boss, this person to move in to catch the nest soak, this person move down here to catch the soak, etc. In the meantime, we have the Shaman soaking here. Just touch it, goes to your partner. Mage just touches, goes to your partner. So much easier for them, and that's why these outer ones are positioned in such a way, right? The only people that need to move are that third soak group. Everyone else is already pre-positioned directly across from their partner, and that is important. Make sure you set it up just like that to minimize movement, because the more you're having people move around with those hopelessness circles, the more likely you are to have explosions, die, and wipe. So just have these set positions in such a way that soakers are directly across from their partner and they can easily catch it. Aside from that, the main thing is always when you're done soaking, you move towards the boss when it's safe to do so. Don't rush it. Again, the weird kind of folding pattern here where these 3 go in, these 3 go into position, then these 2 can come in under the boss. Kind of have to wait a little bit. So just keep that in mind. Be aware. Just don't run over and murder people. So let's take a look at how that looks. Here, we sort of initially stacked up to handle Hope Breakers. Much easier to heal them. Things like Spear Link and Darkness are pretty good for it. And then it comes out almost instantly, so range kind of starts heading out to their spots. Melee holds on a little bit, and now you can see the positions, right? Everyone is in their assigned positions here. Left, middle, right soak. You can see directly across, he steps in, it shoots directly straight across, right? He stepped here, it went there. He stepped here, it went there. He stepped here, it went there. Directly across. Soaks. Then main thing here also is you want these soaks to happen as close as possible. So I'm counting down like 3, 2, 1 soak, and they all step in at the same time. And we have this debuff. And the key here is to make sure you never roll this debuff. That's bad news. Until the next set, you go like 3, 2, 1 soak, and then you see these 2 sides are soaking as we're doing all this other movement around here to have people in the right position. Then I'm calling the next soak here. We have 2 stacks only, of course. It's 3, 2, 1, soak. And the same deal. I believe we had someone die, so we only have 2 stacks here. And then same deal. 3, 2, 1, soak. And this is the last set of soaks here. And again, it's pretty simple the way it looks. But obviously, it requires quite a bit of coordination. So you're definitely going to have a few wipes to this. And obviously, the fewer of these you can do, the better. So like I said, if you're sub 13%, and you do this first hopelessness cleanly, like you see, we're not clean at all. We're down a couple DPS. And a healer. If you do this first hopelessness cleanly, though, and you had a 13%, you can kill this boss before the second set of hopelessness. And you can just ignore it, basically. So what we do here is a similar thing. We don't fully ignore it, but we do like a melee cleanse. And we have immunities, kind of make sure that they're out and they pop something and they'll live, obviously. The other thing here, star dodging. So, you know, everyone is stacked up under the boss again because we're going to get a hope breaker soon for CDs. And it's also just kind of easier. You can top down it as well to kind of see where these stars are. There's way less stars now, obviously. So the key for the hopelessness, though, is to, for the first one anyways, is to finish this hopelessness before the star cast. That's what you're really aiming for. So like we're finishing now and here's the first star. So that's kind of what your goal is. Much easier if you're done. Otherwise, you have people out here doing stuff with stars also shooting at them. It gets into a big mess. So really try and aim for that to be done. And then we move into... let's talk about the skip. Yeah. So these marks are coming out in a second here. All right, people spread out. And we're still going to do that first soak. Just because. And I believe we do one more soak as well in a second here. But like ranged aren't soaking ever. It's only ever melee soaking to let people get into melee even more. And of course the immunity is out here. He's not going to soak, I believe. I believe he's just going to turtle it because he doesn't need to actually soak it. And we just blast the boss through this. But again, that's kind of like what percent were we even before the hopeless. Back it up. All right, so we were like 3% before the hopelessness. So if you have everyone alive, 4% by the second hopelessness, and you can probably commit. But yeah, this was very close. You can see like we almost all died. Yeah, we're like all dead pretty much. So very close kill on our first kill, but we managed to get it. I think that is, for the most part, everything you need to know about this boss. It's a long video. It's a hard boss. This is a lot of prep involved in this boss. It's pretty much end tier boss kind of level of prep. So hopefully this video helped you guys out. If you have any questions about anything at all, feel free to drop a comment down below or come stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics. I'll do my best to answer there. Otherwise, though, again, hopefully this helps you guys. I'll be putting out similar videos on the other bosses within this raid. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.